I am titling this video, The GOAT Debate Ruined the NBA or something like that, because that is kind of what this From Conscious Feeling was, and then he edited it and it's worded pretty differently, so it was a more accurate title then than it is now, and I still like the title, so I'm not changing it, but it's still vaguely in the same stratosphere. So let's go over this take from Conscious Feeling. A genuine hot take in the sense that it is nuanced or overlooked or even all that uncommon of an opinion related to either LeBron James or Michael Jordan is either critically endangered or entirely extinct. These two players in particular have had the entirety of their careers so analyzed and covered and dissected that there is basically no ground left to cover that hasn't already been dragged out and talked about. You need to learn about punctuation, my guy. Oh, good Lord. No ground left to cover that hasn't already been dragged out and talked about on even the biggest stages in sports media. And those two are such popular figures that whatever opinion you have about either of them, I almost guarantee you can find multiple like-minded individuals who share your thought without looking very hard. There's more that I could say about how tired talking about either of these figures can get, and how even Charles Barkley has said it's time to let MJ conversations rest, but that's not what this take is about. Maybe I'll make another later. Yeah, I am very tired of everything being compared to Michael Jordan. I'm very tired of going to comment sections about a modern basketball player, and it's like, Kobe would never do this, Jordan would never do this shit. Like, shut the fuck up. They're not them. Shut up. Move on. Oh my God, I'm tired of it. I'm tired of players being held to the standard of top 10 all-time great players all the fucking time. I'm tired of like players virtually being blamed for not being Michael Jordan. Like, fuck off. It is so annoying to me how the precipice, the idea of what a basketball resume should look like, became Michael Jordan, and anything short of that is like almost failing to some people. Like, yeah, most people aren't going to be Michael Jordan, and anyone who is capable of being on his level isn't going to do it the same fucking way that Mike does. Like, so many people spend their time bitching about how things aren't the way that they were. Shut up. That's my take. Hello, everybody. Welcome to Little Rusty Buckets. We are back with Discord hot takes. If you would like to join this Discord, you have to join our Patreon, which is in the link down below. You get access to this Discord as well as some inside scoops on the content, early content, things like that. Would really appreciate it if you supported Rusty Buckets Co. With that said, let's go ahead and get into these takes from Cade Cunninghamster. You see here, you see how he's got a Suns logo next to him? We recently got this installed. This is a cool thing. You put your team next to you so you know your allegiances. But from Cade Cunninghamster, which is maybe my favorite name on this entire Discord: being humble in the NBA is a dead art. It is always good for players to have self-confidence and believe they are the best, but too much of it has led to most players becoming completely arrogant jerks, and some even believe their time is too valuable to give to the fans around him. Players like Steve Nash, Tim Duncan, Chauncey Billups, and more were humble players who didn't have to showboat or be obnoxious to play their game and be better than their peers on the floor and still hold more aura than anyone in their own right. Humble players are becoming more and more rare across all sports, and more needs to be that way. I mean, based on what data exactly? I don't know if that's true so much as there is just more of a media presence, there is more interviews, there's more clips. You probably don't hear about how egotistical a guy on the Sacramento Kings is in the 1990s. You know what I mean? Like, I just think we have access to more information. Being provocative is all the more encouraged in our modern culture, and I think it's more that than like a lack of humbleness, so much as like, I mean, you look at what has happened with Tim Duncan and his legacy and how little people talk about him despite how big of a figure he is in NBA history. Maybe if he talked a little bit of shit occasionally, it would have boosted his legacy or whatever, but I don't know. This seems a little bit like old man yells at clouds to me. There are plenty of players who don't say fucking anything, but you don't really give anyone credit for not saying anything, which leads to this exact problem where it feels like only the arrogant jerks are the ones that are out there, but it's just that the arrogant jerks are the ones who take up most of the space. You know what I mean? So I'm gonna have to disagree. From Seti Osman's Strongest Soldier: since the Batman take went well, we'll drop another cinema take. Fellowship of the Ring is the best of the Middle-earth movies, and yes, I put it above Return of the the King? Well, I'm actually in the middle of watching Lord of the Rings for the first time, and I have only watched Fellowship of the Ring and The Two Towers. Side note, really funny that a movie called The Two Towers came out in 2002. Between the two, I like Fellowship more. I'll get back to you and maybe I'll tell you what I think of Return of the King, but as of now, Fellowship is better than the second one, so there you go. From G, Sweet Caroline is a fucking abysmal song. Also, fuck the Red Sox. I don't care about the Red Sox, but I agree. Sweet Caroline, I hate that song. This one's nice and petty, although it is from a Timberwolves fan, so, you know, maybe not the best source of it, but as a result of the Kawhi contract scandal, the Clippers should have all of their championships erased from the NBA history book. That's a good one. From Khalid, basketball discourse would be a lot better if we stopped talking about concepts like underrated versus overrated. This is largely because as terms, they're incredibly subjective and end up building a dude's reputation. A player can coast off of being an okay defender, for example, because he was previously seen as underrated. Another player can be constantly given shit because he's constantly seen as overrated. The phrase also often means this player isn't getting shit as much as I'd like, or people aren't talking about these players as much as I'd like. Yeah, I always get annoyed with this player is overrated because if this player did this, then we would say this. And it's like, maybe just be more nice and less a dick about a player underperforming all the time and apply that equally, instead of being like, we treat these players unfairly, but we're not treating this player unfairly. What's wrong? Why are we doing that? Like, fuck that. Just be nicer to other players. Like, you don't have to be like, we need to bring this guy down to the level. The thing is, like you said, it's extremely subjective. And when I say a player is underrated or overrated, I kind of always have to add the caveat of like, it kind of depends on what corner of the internet you're in. It kind of depends on the people that you have around you. Just like, it really depends, because like in one circle, one player can be overrated, and in another circle, the same player can be underrated. It's just kind of messy. It is kind of a discourse cesspool, just because it's like, okay, underrated based on who's saying what, overrated based on who's saying what. It's arbitrary, but so is most of basketball discourse, so I guess it is what it is. From Pete the Weapon, Kevin Garnett is the GOAT trash talker, not MJ, not Bird, not Peyton. Garnett would talk about players like they weren't even there and still hits people with crazy one-liners to this day. His best moment was grabbing the back of someone and asking, who the fuck is this? That is truly the most disrespectful shit you can do to another player. Sure. I mean, I loved Larry Bird's brand of trash talking. Like, all those stories are really good. There's less MJ trash talk stories than you'd think. It's usually someone talked to Mike and then he was like, okay, bet, and then fucking annihilates them. Kevin Garnett's energy has always been my favorite. Kevin Garnett's one of my favorite players of all time. People describe it as crackhead energy. I love the simultaneous anger and enthusiasm that he plays with. It's just so energetic, and that energy just adds to the overall, like, hate to use the word fucking aura here, but like the aura of like menace. Like, that man is menacing because he seems like he's crazy. A lot of it's an act. Like, I don't think he's actually that unhinged, but comes off unhinged enough that it ends up being pretty damn effective. Even with his success, Kawhi will go down as one of the most controversial players and one of the biggest what-ifs of all time. Regardless of how one cites the Spurs drama and the load management drama, the decision not to run it back and go to LA, the current allegations, all of these are polarizing and will diminish whatever success he had in fans' minds. Of course, he's a fantastic athlete with more success than most players could ever ask for, but the drama that's followed him will always leave a bad taste in some people's mouths. I have no idea how he will go down in history, but he will be judged just as much on these controversies as he is on basketball. I don't know. The extent of the Kawhi scandal, it's still unfolding. Like, I don't think there's anything that will harm Kawhi's legacy that directly, unless there ends up being evidence that he was withholding play because of withheld payments. There's been people connecting dots between like when he's played, when he's returned, associated with like when he's getting payouts from this fucking scam. I think that's a stretch. I think the idea that, especially for, I mean, how much money has Kawhi made in his NBA career just on contracts alone? They were talking about this $2 million payment recently, and it was like he came back right after he got this payment. It's like, I don't think Kawhi was faking injury, especially over the course of like a year, just for a couple $1,000,000. Like, it's a petty amount of money for who he is as a player, for the amount of money that he has made. I'm trying to find his total career earnings. Where's your contract? Yeah, he's made over $330 million in his career. He's got another $100 million on his upcoming salary if he ends up getting it. If they voided it, then man, can you imagine he loses $100 million because he got fucking 50? That would be funny. Yeah, I just don't think that he would be like, I'm not playing anymore until you pay me $1.75 million when I have $350 million on contracts alone. That's not counting sponsorships. He's probably made twice as much on that. So yeah, especially if he's getting a bunch of shady under the table sponsors. Like, I just don't think he would withhold play for that. But that said, it's still interesting, still sticky. I would say if that was the case, though, if there's actual evidence that he was not playing just over not getting these under the table payments, then that hurts his legacy a lot. I think that makes us look at his injuries, his history with all that a little bit sideways. Can you imagine if like Kawhi is more of a what if than he should be, just because he was like, I'm gonna leverage my play to get under the table payments? That would be fucking nuts. Evidence suggests that's not the case, and I just think it's a stretch. I think it would be absolutely insane and stupid if Kawhi was withholding play over such a petty amount of money for someone who has a net worth of like $500 million. Maybe it's possible. Rich people do crazy things. I don't understand why you would fight tooth and nail for that amount of money when you literally have more money than you could ever need. This is the way that these people are. Sometimes it's never enough. So maybe, but unless that's the case, I don't think that that is going to override the 2019 championship. I just don't. But yeah, I'm basically, whether or not this hurts Kawhi's legacy significantly, I think is determined by that factor alone, because like, I don't think people will care that much 20 years down the line. Kawhi was getting paid under the table, whatever. I'm not subscribing to the like, what you snitching for, Pablo mentality, because that's fucking dumb and ridiculous. I don't think this will tarnish his legacy too bad, again, unless he was withholding play. From D'Lo's mom's boyfriend, second most controversial hot take, Tyrese went from considered overrated to actually being overrated over the course of the playoffs. He led the Pacers on a generational run. He gave it his all, and it took them to the brink. He's a great point guard and absolutely should combine with another great player to be a piece of a dynasty. But the glazing people are giving him now is crazy. He is not a top 10 player, maybe a fringe top 20. I wouldn't say fringe. His leadership skills are not in question, but people have overinflated his basketball skill to the point it's silly. He's got a great team. He's a great point guard, and he had a great playoffs, but he is not the player people are saying he is on a nightly basis. Maybe those are flashes of what will come once he comes back, but Hallie is overrated as fuck right now. Nah, I'm not with you on him being over, like, no. I think he was underrated going into the playoffs, and now he is properly rated after the fact. Also, like, he had what, like 3 or 4 game winners throughout the course of the playoffs? That's crazy. That is absolutely fucking bonkers. And the thing is, you want to just have the conversation specifically, entirely about how good he is on a night-to-night basis, and that doesn't factor in, fine. But if you do something like that in a run to go all the way to game 7 of the finals before getting hurt, I'm going to think very highly of you for it. It's going to shape my perspective of what I thought you were capable of. So like, I absolutely think he has become properly rated as a result of that. Will he ever do anything as good as that run again? Maybe not, especially when he's coming back from an Achilles injury. But like, I don't think it's fair to like act like that should not hold him in high esteem. He's not a top 10 player. I would not put him in that category. He's like on the fringes of top 10. He is definitely not fringe top 20. He is top 20. Yeah, no, hard disagree with you on that one. Sorry. From Pete the Weapon, a team or player overlapping with a dynasty doesn't mean they're immune to criticism. The Bulls, Spurs, Celtics, Lakers, and even the Warriors, to some extent, they were not favored to win every single series for the entire existence. It's only in hindsight that we say things like, what are you gonna do? It's the Black Mamba. It's an oversimplification justification to say it's just about team 1 being better than team 2. Sometimes they actually do have a realistic shot to win and still lose. The big one for me in this particular thing, and it's because I'm a John Stockton and Karl Malone hater, of course, but the way that people excuse the Jazz losing in the 98 finals because it was Jordan, the Jazz were favored to win that series because the Bulls were kind of the worst version of the Bulls was in 1998. The worst championship Bulls roster was in 1998. Scottie Pippen was getting worse. Dennis Rodman was getting considerably worse. Michael Jordan wasn't quite like a 35 point per game scorer anymore. I think he led the league with 28 that year. They were starting to lose their powers a good bit, and they also had a tumultuous path to the finals. I believe that year the Pacers took them to 7. I will double check that just to be sure. Yes, conference finals versus the Pacers went to 7, and game 7 was only determined by 5 points, so like they barely skirted by the Indiana Pacers here, and my understanding is the Jazz were favored. The Jazz were a team that had been like long building to this point. They were an older roster as well, just like the Bulls were. Actually, technically, John Stockton was older than Michael Jordan by a year, but Karl Malone's a player who aged super, super well. Yeah, that's an example of it, but what you're saying here is true. I do think like there's like something like the 2018 Rockets, for example, I would say like that's an example where you're able to be like, yeah, they just ran into a team that's just impossibly good. What are you gonna do? But I can absolutely see it just being an oversimplified excuse. A lot of it is. So I agree with you, but also sometimes it's true. Like it's not one nor the other. There is a middle ground. Okay, so from Briscoe, there is a difference in my opinion between the greatest and best of all time. Greatest is the more traditional criteria of how much you do, considering context being probably the number one criteria, and that along with longevity being mixed in there considerably. Best of all time can more consider looking at talent in a vacuum. What did a player play like at their peak and the impact it had on their teams as a criteria to more heavily consider instead of team accomplishments. The problem with this is it's really impossible to actually separate those things fully, because like a part of how good you are comes from like a citing evidence of how good you are could be in what you accomplish. That's also about how great you are. And then like you can only be considered so great if you're not that good. You know, people don't have fucking Tony Parker as a top 10 player of all time, despite the fact that he's a multiple time all-star and five-time champion. I think he was on the 99 Spurs. Was he on the 99 Spurs? No, he wasn't. He was four championships, a finals MVP, multiple all-star teams, couple all-NBA teams, couple of top 10 MVP placements. But you won't see that guy up there because, let's be real, Tony Parker is not a top 5 point guard talent of all time. Not really even close. There's not even much of an argument for him being top 10, although there is one. But I don't know. People make this point about the greatest or best of all time. Like, the thing is, you can't just separate them super easy. It's not as simple as that. And a lot of people say it as though it is as simple as that. It's just not. So I agree, but like you'll also see people make like a top 10 talented players of all time, and like Carmelo Anthony and Kyrie Irving are on it. Like, okay, so we're talking about scoring bag then. You guys just want an excuse to place a guy who scores in a fun way in a top 10 list. Do that if you want, but I'll tell you what, Kyrie Irving nor Carmelo Anthony are top 10 most talented players ever. It's also a little bit arbitrary because like there's a heavy skew to modern players as a result of that. Like I said, it's just not so simple. You're not wrong. I feel like that's been my answer to multiple of the takes in this video. Has been not as simple as you're putting it, but you have a point. From Memphis Propaganda, fuck D-Lo, WALL-E is a better movie than The Incredibles. I disagree. I think The Incredibles is basically the best Pixar movie. My favorite Pixar movie is Inside Out, but I think Incredibles a little better. Like, if I actually had to choose which is a better movie, I would go with Incredibles. I just like the other one more. But WALL-E is also a top 5. I can't get mad at you for thinking it's better. I'll watch Incredibles over WALL-E any day of the fucking week, personally. Oh boy, here we go. Getting into the weeds with this one. Needs to be said, traditional cereal, not dry, as a breakfast and snack food is by far the most overrated thing to choose to eat, and it comes down to this. Have you ever been like, I think I'm gonna save this for later with an already made bowl with milk, and if you say yes, then you actually do? I'm looking at you like a psycho for willing to enjoy that soft bread mush with cereal. Here's the meta here, what you're fucking up. People clown on milk before the cereal, and I get that if you're like, I'm going to eat a big old bowl of cereal, but if you're worried about like saving some of it for later, fill the bowl with milk and then just periodically pour a little bit of cereal in, and do that a couple of times until you're like, all right, I'm done, and then you haven't wasted any cereal. Like, it logistically makes more sense if that's a legit concern of yours. But I can agree that cereal's a little overrated. I get very tired of it very fast. The only ones that are actually like, hell yeah, I can't wait to eat this, are just fucking poison, just pure sugar. So yeah, sure, I can agree to that, but there's a very simple workaround for your specific grievance with cereal. This is a screenshot from something else, but drop your boldest take for 23-24. Kevin Durant comes out as gay. Tell you what, that Kevin Durant hater manifesto would be thrown in the garbage. It would be so cool if Kevin Durant was gay. I'm rooting for it, frankly. All right, last take of the video from Mosshead. Actually, I think I'm gonna get this one from Kay here as well. Brunson is the best small guard scorer ever, 6'1" and shorter in NBA history, over Isaiah Thomas and AI. For a guard that's as much of a paint scorer as Brunson, he consistently is one of the most efficient players in paint scoring. Not to mention, he's by far the best three-point shooter out of his contemporaries. He's also the best off the ball, as well as most of his off-the-ball shooting splits being even higher than his on-ball stats. And even though it says Brunson is 6'1", in reality he's probably closer to 6 foot to 5'10", and he's averaged 26 on 49% on 19 attempts from the field and 40% from 3 on 6 attempts. I don't know if that's from this last year or just him as a Knick. I think I'm still going to give it to Allen Iverson because he has the scoring titles and the longevity. If you want to say maybe Brunson overtakes him in that conversation down the line, I'm with you, but I'm not quite there yet. Brunson has the benefit of modern spacing, even though he's never had the most ideal spacing in New York, at least up until this last year. Still very fucking good spacing by comparison to the shit that Allen Iverson was dealing with. So there is like the efficiency gap there is pretty much just that context. And even though I do think Allen Iverson can be kind of overrated, I do find it annoying when people hold his efficiency against him. And it's like, man, actually watch the circumstances in which he's playing with. It makes complete sense why his efficiency is that bad. Rudy said Larry Brown should go straight to hell. From K ... Take a page out of basketball's book and use era adjusted efficiency stats. True shooting percentage plus is right there on a basketball reference, and modern spacing makes high efficiency way more common. This is right along with the point I was making. Adjusted three-point attempts rate and free throw rate are also there. Half of the modern players is better than old player takes, with efficiency as a component should consider this. I don't even know if this is a take, but I do pay $5 a month to say it. Yeah, relative true shooting percentage should be the universal metric when discussing the comparing players between eras. I made a point to do that in my Chris Paul video, where I was comparing the efficiencies of some all-time guards from like the 80s and 90s versus Chris Paul. Relative true shooting percentage. It's the best way. You need to understand their efficiency relative to the NBA, because like a 60% true shooting percentage now isn't that crazy. A 60% true shooting percentage in 1992 is pretty fucking crazy. So yeah, absolutely spot on the money. Great take. That is the end of this video. Again, if you want to join the Patreon, or if you want to join the Discord, you have to do that via Patreon. $3 a month, like-minded people who just want to talk basketball without being dicks about it. But yeah, that is it. Goodbye.